all the results that I got from 281 milligrams for 13 weeks was a pretty accurate window of time. So I do expect to get very good results for the next 13 weeks on 608 milligrams steroids in total. Vigorous Steve here. I've been back on cycle now for 13 weeks, did my blood work yesterday, took progress pictures also. So here we are. We're going to review everything and see which adjustments I need to make going forward, because I do feel that I've been stagnating a little bit for the last couple of weeks regarding the progression of my physique, strength-wise and fat loss-wise. To be fair, I've also increased my calories from 2,500 to 2,800 calories per day by adding in an extra meal with protein, vegetables, and a little bit of fat, because I felt that I wasn't really recovering anymore. Again, my strength has been progressively going up over the last 13 weeks, but I reached a point where I felt that strength wasn't really increasing, but neither was the recovery improving. For the last 13 weeks, I've been using 281 milligrams of anabolic androgenic steroids combined with a couple different ancillaries, fat loss aids, and appetite suppressants in place. So I need to make some adjustments to my protocol. I was also coming up to a deload, which I'm taking this week. So I'm taking a whole week off from training while fasting at the same time. Not the same fast as I did previously a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't watched that video, you can watch it here, where I basically had every pharmacological intervention in place to potentiate more fat loss while fasting. So I'll be doing none of that this week. I'll explain a little bit more about this upcoming fast at the end of this video. So I'll be deloading and fasting at the same time. And I also went to Pattaya last weekend, where I ate a little bit off plan, ate a little bit extra here and there, going out to a couple dinners. And it's been hard to get back on this 2,800 calorie diet ever since, because my metabolism sped up a little bit by eating a little bit off plan, right? Doing a little bit more extensive workouts in Pattaya, driving all over town to document the city for you guys, doing some vlogging. So I've been not 100% on diet since then, maybe eating 3,000, 3,500 calories, as you can see from the progress pictures, which we'll discuss a little bit later in this video. So we'll go over everything, the adjustments which took place, the blood work changes, the adjustments that I need to put into practice going forward to continue with my physique transformation. Before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let's do a brief summary of the last 13 weeks. I started my cycle on July the 12th, exactly 13 weeks ago, looking like this, about 92 kilos at that time at the start of the cycle. I'll put all the progress pictures and the protocols and the diets on the screen so you guys can follow along. You might have to pause the video here and there because I'm just going to go over everything briefly over the last 13 weeks. So this is what I looked like. This was the diet that I was following before I started the cycle up until about 3 weeks ago, when I increased my calories to 2,800 per day by adding in an extra meal. So I was eating 3 whole meals, 1 pre-workout shake, and 1 snack before bed. And sometimes I skipped the snack on the days that I didn't work out. So let's say I was having a snack 5 days a week, and of course Sunday would be a refeed. So I might have skipped that snack consisting of yogurt and blueberries maybe once or twice per week, ending up at 2,300 calories perhaps. So now recently I've been having 2,800 calories, but this has been the diet for the majority of the cycle, as well as what I was eating before I started the cycle. So on July 12th, I started this cycle, and in 5 weeks of running that, I ended up at 98.5 kilograms, looking like this. You can see the blood work results of this 5-week cycle update right here, if you haven't watched that video already. So that was at week 5. I decided to do a fast after that with extensive fat loss pharmacology in place to speed up fat loss. If you haven't watched the results of the before and after, you can watch that video right here. Then after the fast and deload from week 5 to 6, I changed my PED protocol to this, with a couple of modifications here and there as the cycle progressed. Now we'll get back to the PED protocol before we get into the blood work results. At week 9, I did a little update on 5-amino-1-MQ. Ended up looking like this at 99.7 kilograms. These are probably the best progress pictures that I have over the last 13 weeks because my physique has declined a little bit as I increased the calories to 3,000, 3,300 here and there. So I'm looking a little bit softer than the week 9 5-amino-1-MQ update progress pictures. If you haven't watched the video about 5-amino-1-MQ, I would highly advise you to watch that. You can watch it right here. A very promising compound that, well, up until now, after 8 or 9 weeks of running this compound, I don't really see any adverse effects on my blood work. Besides that, it's very expensive and very difficult to source. So keep a 5-amino-1-MQ on your radar. I will discontinue it going forwards. Then after the 5-amino-1-MQ update video, I increased my calories from 2,500 to 2,800 calories per day by adding in an extra sea bass meal. I spaced the almonds or walnuts that I would normally have with meal 2 out over meal 2 and 3. So instead of having 50 grams of almonds, I now have 25 grams of almonds with meal 2 and 3. So that's 4 meals, 1 pre-workout shake, and 1 snack before bed, which I had at this point in time probably every day, right? No days off from the midnight snack consisting of probiotic yogurt with a little bit of fruit coming from blueberries, raspberries, or grapes. So I've been eating that pretty much up until I went to Padia. Then I went off diet, and after I came back from Padia, I've been eating that also, but I've been kind of hand measuring the almonds or the walnuts. So instead of 25 grams with meal 2 and 3, I probably had 50 grams or 75 grams. And the snack before bed was 450 grams of yogurt and as much blueberries or grapes or both as that bowl could hold. So I'm assuming I've been eating 3,300 calories, maybe even more, since my Padia trip. So as of last weekend, I'm 100 kilos on the dot, looking like that. Not too shabby. I think that's pretty good results considering that I've been on 281 milligrams of steroids and, well, again, a decent amount of fat-burning aids and appetite suppressants in place with raloxifene to mitigate some gynecomastia, which up until this point, I can't really say that it's been super effective. So this is what I look like as of last weekend, stagnating a little bit, but to be fair, I could be doing a little bit more due diligence on the diet parts. Now, regarding the strength progression, that has been going up steadily over the last 13 weeks. I noticed a decent bump after increasing the calories to 2,800 per day, but especially after Padia and I'm eating a little bit more royally since then. Right, my strength has been going up. So I almost didn't want to take a deload this week, but I put it in the calendar because I know if I continue for another week or two, I will definitely get into that overtrained state. So I just preemptively took this deload this week while fasting. I'm sure the strength will stay relatively the same after this fast because I do intend to go back to this 2,800 calorie diet that I had before going on holiday in this vlogging trip. So let's briefly compare the progress pictures from week 5, after which I changed my PED protocol, to last weekend at week 13. So I went from 98.5 kilograms to 100 kilograms over this period of 7 weeks that I followed this new PED protocol. I look bigger, I look fuller, I look harder, I look leaner. So all in all, I would say that's good progress over the last 7 weeks, judging from the front and back double bicep pictures. Even though the posing is a little bit different, you can tell from the back double bicep pictures that I'm not completely flared. Right? My lats are not completely out because I had a deep tissue massage therapy session the day before on Saturday, and I feel that my back is a little bit locked up. So unfortunately, I couldn't flare my lats out completely. Maybe you guys don't notice this, but I saw it immediately when I took my progress pictures. So hopefully I'll be able to resolve that over the next week while I do progress pictures again. All in all, I would still say it's solid progress over the last 7 weeks. But to be fair, when you compare the 5-amino-1-MQ progress pictures at week 9 to last weekend at week 13, I see very little progress. Right? I would say I'm the same body fat percentage, albeit that I'm a little bit more watery at week 13. So over the last 4 weeks, I got fuller. Right? I got a little bit bigger, I would say. It's a little bit of a stretch. I feel that the pictures look very, very comparable. But I got a little bit more watery at week 13. Again, I've been eating more calories and not following the diet as strictly. So I hope to get the shape or the leanness that is better than the 5-amino-1-MQ pictures at week 9 next week after I finish this fast, and then progress in muscularity going forward. So let's go over the current cycle that I've been following from week 6 to 13. Before we get into the blood work, I've been running 156 milligrams testosterone enanthate coming from Bayer Testoviron and 125 milligrams primobolan methinolone enanthate coming from Bayer Rimobolan, split out over 3 injections Monday, Wednesday, Friday in an attempt to keep my serum estradiol levels within the reference range, right? Before it was around 30 picograms per milliliter, but it did increase going forward because I also added in ACG at 250 IUs 3 times per week in between the injections of testosterone enanthate and primobolan. So I did those injections on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I took 250 IUs ACG. I added in 60 milligrams roloxifene daily, 30 milligrams upon waking, and 30 milligrams in the evening. I took, up until about 4 weeks ago, right around the time that I did the 5-amino-1-MQ update video, I took 5 to 10 milligrams of GHK copper post-workout intramuscularly in an attempt to bring up weaker body parts, which I feel is effective. Many of you guys have mentioned that my chest was getting more pronounced as the videos were coming along over the last 13 weeks. So I did, right, GHK copper for, well, let's say 10 weeks or something in duration, mostly my chest and my teardrop. I feel that my teardrop didn't progress as much, but the chest has progressed significantly. So I'll reintroduce the GHK copper because I had a little bit of a stock issue. So that's why I discontinued it, but it's back in stock now. So I'll reintroduce the GHK copper after this fast, right? When I start training again, and then see if I can bring up my triceps a little bit more. And when I'm done with that experiment, I'll release a video on how to bring up or improve weaker body parts, discussing different training strategies, nutritional strategies, recovery methods, deep tissue massage therapy, and of course pharmacology, including GHK copper, on how to improve particular body parts and make everything look nicely balanced without losing separation, striation, and details, right? Everybody can use synthol and blow up a particular body part by putting a ton of oil in it, but not everybody can improve a body part while keeping separation and striation. So that's how I want to approach that video. Stay tuned for that. I'm a couple weeks away from releasing it in the future. I was running 50 milligrams modafinil daily to increase productivity and cognition while I was dieting. I will discontinue that this week while I'm fasting, and I'll probably reintroduce that going forward. I was using 1.2 milligrams liraglutide 3 times per week on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to suppress my appetite. I did get a little bit of appetite suppression from the modafinil as well as the liraglutide. I will discontinue that this week while fasting. Also, again, this is a pharmacology-free fast that I'm doing this week. So I'm stopping the modafinil, I'm stopping the liraglutide, I'm stopping the 5-amino-1-MQ, which I was running 150 milligrams 5-amino-1-MQ spaced out over 3 servings of 50 milligrams, pre-cardio, pre-workout, and before bed. I will give my final thoughts on 5-amino-1-MQ in a separate video that I will release sometime this week. For now, I will discontinue the compound because, well, there's no long-term evidence on 5-amino-1-MQ use in humans. There's plenty of animal studies, but no long-term data in humans. So I'm probably the only one who actually documents his blood work on 5-amino-1-MQ. And even though, as of now, I don't see any adverse effects on my blood work parameters, when I was running 200 milligrams 5-amino-1-MQ for 1 week during the fast a couple weeks ago, and now at week 13, after 6 or 7 or 8 weeks on 5-amino-1-MQ at dosages ranging from 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams per day. The longest period I was on 150 milligrams 5-amino-1-MQ per day. So I don't see any adverse effects, but again, no long-term data. It's a novel compound, hasn't passed clinical trials. For now, I'm going to discontinue it, even though I feel it's highly beneficial during a fat loss journey. And then maybe after the next cycle adjustment and blood work update, let's say 7-8 weeks from now, I might reintroduce it again. But in the next block of training, I want to experiment with a couple other fat loss aids and see how they compare, right? comparing 5-amino-1-MQ in combination with HGH-Frag, and see how that combination compares to a combination of clenbuterol, GW1516, SR9009, and ribosine. I was running 250 to 500 micrograms HGH-Frag, 250 micrograms before cardio, 7 days a week, and 250 micrograms pre-workout 5 times a week. Now, still not exactly sure how much fat loss I got from HGH-Frag. I'll make a separate video discussing HGH-Frag and how efficacious it is, comparing HGH-Frag to actual growth hormone, which I have a ton of experience with, whether that's generic or pharmaceutical grade. So I'll release a separate video discussing HGH-Frag, or anti-obesity drug, as it's also known, in a separate video, and give my final thoughts on the compounds. And I was also taking about 1,000 micrograms Cmax through nasal spray administrations. Now, during the last couple of weeks, I've been experimenting with Cmax nasal sprays as well as subcutaneous administrations, and comparing that with C-Lank nasal sprays and subcutaneous administrations, all around 1,000 micrograms. So I'll also release a separate video comparing Cmax to C-Lank and see how strength athletes can incorporate these compounds. Long story short, it feels like I'm healing my brain. Literally, guys. It feels like my brain is healing from all this strenuous hypertrophy workout, sets to failure, grinding, right, teeth clenching, and feeling completely miserable and fucked post-workout 5 days in the week. That's all gone. Or close to gone, right? After leg day, I still get it. But now it's pretty much gone, right? Phenomenal compounds. Really, all this experimentation that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks. I know it's a slew of different stuff that I'm on, and I'll release a separate video discussing that regarding addiction, and you know how much of these pharmacological aids are being put into place with all separate benefits. But when you look at the list, you're like, man, I'm in like 13 different compounds already, right? A little bit of addictive personality disorder. Right, when I look at these extensive PED protocols that I'm running here and there. We'll discuss that also in a separate video. So I'll compare Cmax to C-Lank, both nasal sprays and subcutaneous administrations, in a separate video releasing this week. A lot of drug videos this week. Great. You guys must be super happy. So that will be a separate video. And the ancillaries were 5 milligrams Nebivolol daily, 10 milligrams Esdomib daily, and I increased the telmisartan from 20 milligrams to 40 milligrams daily. I think at the same time I increased my diet, because I did notice that I was getting a little bit high blood pressure during the leg workouts. Again, I'm not using Cialis at the moment, only telmisartan, because I wanted to see how it compares regarding my blood pressure. So I increased about 3 weeks ago from 20 milligrams telmisartan to 40 milligrams telmisartan. Most of this I will discontinue this week. So the only thing I will continue is the testosterone, the primobolan, and the ACG. I will discontinue the raloxifene, the GHK copper I already discontinued, the modafinil will discontinue, liraglutide, 5-amino-1-MQ, HGH-Frag, Cmax, Nebivolol, Esdomib, telmisartan, discontinue all of that. So basically I'm just on TRT plus, right? Test, primo, ACG. Everything else I will take out. And I want to see how my blood work will change while doing this very traditional fast, consisting of water and coffee. I will not take any over-the-counter supplements, no micronutrients, no multivitamins, no fasting mimicking diet with salads in place, right? I will not eat anything, no chewing allowed this week. Water and coffee, no fat loss aids. Everything else I will discontinue besides calcium D-glucarate and EDTA disodium, a chelating agent to remove heavy metals from the body, including minerals and iron and all that stuff, right? EDTA disodium chelators don't discriminate. They will take out all the minerals. So I tested my serum electrolytes and heavy metals in my body, the lead and the mercury and the cadmium and the aluminium. I tested all of that, but I will have to wait 2 weeks before I get those results back. So again, there will be a separate video discussing how EDTA and calcium D-glucarate could potentially detoxify these heavy metals at a faster rate. So I will test all of those related markers before and after this fast that I'm doing basically with water, coffee, EDTA disodium, and calcium D-glucarate. and see how much heavy metals and other toxins I was able to excrete following this protocol. But you'll have to wait a couple weeks until I get all of the results in and I can make a head-on-head comparison before and after. All right, let's get into the bloodwork results. I'm not going to go over all of them, not get into very detailed specifics, because otherwise this video is going to be way too long and you guys are going to nod off and exit the video somewhere midway. So I'm just going to discuss the relevant markers. Of the urinalysis, the specific gravity was 1.009 and the pH of my urine was 6 yesterday, which means I could have drank a little bit more water. So keep that in mind when we discuss the hematocrit, red blood cell count, creatinine levels, all the markers which are a little bit dependent on hydration. I didn't drink enough water going in for this blood work because yesterday morning was a little bit hectic. I tried to watch the Olympia. I tried to take progress pictures. And then we had to schedule a grab taxi and make our ass over to Bria Labs to get the blood work drawn, right? A little bit hectic. So I probably fell about a liter short of being properly hydrated, as you can see from the specific gravity. Normally, if I go in hydrated, the specific gravity falls towards the bottom of the reference range, while the pH of my urine is about 6 to 7, right? A normal neutral pH of the urine. All of the other markers in the urinalysis fall within normal parameters, so there's nothing remarkable there. Of the complete blood counts, comparing August 15th, 7 weeks ago, to yesterday. White blood cell count increased by about 10% from 4,740 cells per cubic millimeter to 5,220 cells per cubic millimeter. Hemoglobin increased with about 16% to 17.6 grams per deciliter. Hematocrit jumped up quite a bit from 47 to 53%. Again, keep in mind that I'm not 100% hydrated. Potentially my hematocrit could have been 52%, which is at the top of the reference range, a slight difference, right? Because on August 15th, I was properly hydrated, and now I'm not properly hydrated. I'm still hydrated, but I'm not properly hydrated. So keep that in mind. Hematocrit, nonetheless, still came up quite significantly. So for the guys that are wondering if telmisartan is potent enough to keep your hematocrit from going up too high, as of now, I would say no. But if I increase the dose of primobolan and my hematocrit stays around 52, 53, 54 even, I would say that telmisartan might be beneficial to keep your hematocrit and your overall red blood cell count in range, which there is some conflicting evidence. But again, it's never been studied in bodybuilders using erythropoietic compounds like primobolan or boldenone. But well, from this blood work, my hematocrit is steadily increasing. Keep that in mind going forward. Red blood cell count increased from 4.85 to 5.63 million cells per cubic millimeter. So that's an increase of about 16%. Mean corpulus hemoglobin and mean corpulus hemoglobin concentration stayed pretty much the same, a fluctuation of about 2 to 3%. Red cell distribution width came down from 14.1 to 13.2, so that's a reduction of 6.4%. The total platelet count stayed pretty comparable, albeit that it went down with 5.1%. It's still within the ballpark of where my platelet count usually is. So it went from 254,000 to 241,000 cells per cubic millimeter over the last 7 weeks. White blood cell differential stayed pretty comparable to the last blood work results. Of the blood chemistry and the kidney function panel, the glucose went up slightly with 11% from 71 to 79 milligrams per deciliter. Again, that's a moment in time. Blood glucose fluctuates throughout the day. My hemoglobin A1C is still pretty comparable to where it's always been during a ketogenic diet. Blood urea nitrogen increased from 18.2 to 22.8 milligrams per deciliter. So that's an increase of 25.3%. And that's probably because I increased my protein intake. Now, I didn't increase my protein intake with 25%, right? I increased it with 50 grams per day, from 250 grams protein to 300 grams of protein per day. But my blood urea nitrogen still came up 25%. Is that hydration? Potentially, right? The hydration is a little bit different. Or is it because I'm metabolizing protein a little bit differently as my muscle mass is increasing? Could also be the case. Creatinine went up with 9.6% from 1.25 milligrams per deciliter to 1.37 milligrams per deciliter. And this is exactly what I expected over the last 13 weeks. Right before I started my cycle, my creatinine was 0.97 milligrams per deciliter. And as my muscle mass has been increasing, my training intensity has been increasing, so has my serum creatinine levels. So unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. As you're getting bigger and stronger, and as your muscle mass increases, so do the metabolic waste products. So you see that the creatinine is slowly increasing, but I also checked my cystatin C in serum, and that's still 0.85 milligrams per liter. So that falls within normal parameters. It's very comparable to the previous cystatin C that I did a couple of weeks ago. So in that sense, kidney function is totally fine, but the metabolic waste products are increasing. Creatinine is going up, and CPK, creatine phosphokinase, is also going up with, 48%, from 1,205 to 1,782 units per liter. I'm sure that will drop in half over this deload and fast that I'm doing this week. Still, it's creeping up there. And uric acid increased with about 10% from 4.1 to 4.5 milligrams per deciliter. Again, it's always a ballpark of where my uric acid usually is. Could have been a little bit lower, as with most of the kidney function markers, because again, I didn't go in 100% hydrated. Now, for the last 7 weeks, my lipid levels have changed somewhat. My total cholesterol came up with 20% from 135 to 162 milligrams per deciliter. Still below the reference range of up to 200 milligrams per deciliter, but I haven't changed anything to my esdamide, right? Still 10 milligrams per day. Still running 1,000 milligrams citrus bergamot per day, and about 800 milligrams EPA and DHA from fish oil with each meal. But I increased my fish oil intake because I'm having more meals. So I'm having, instead of 5 servings, 6 servings per day. Still doing my daily fasted cardio. The only really thing that has changed was the 5-amino-1-MQ and the raloxifene. Now, from all the clinical literature that I can find, 5-amino-1-MQ doesn't change your lipid levels. But raloxifene, just like all the other selective estrogen receptor modulators acting like an estrogen in the liver, is known to positively affect cholesterol levels. But my cholesterol came up. But my HDL came up also with 22.7% from 44 to 54 milligrams per deciliter. So my total cholesterol came up because my total HDL came up, and my total LDL came up from 88 to 99 milligrams per deciliter, an increase of 12.5%. But from all the blood work that I've seen on myself and with clients, when you add in the ACG and tamoxifen, Nolvadex, lipid levels generally improve. Total cholesterol comes down. HDL goes up also, like in this case, but LDL comes down as well. And so overall, the lipid levels improve when using ACG, tamoxifen together or separately. But now in this combination of ACG, raloxifene, 5-amino-1-MQ, and the other stuff that I'm using, cholesterol is going up, LDL is going up, but at least HDL is going up also. So again, the ratio between HDL and LDL is still the same, 2-to-1 pretty much. Right? It was 2-to-1 before, and now it's still 2-to-1, so at least the ratio is not worsening. But that I did not expect total cholesterol to come up and LDL to come up, considering the compounds that I'm using. I didn't check my lipoprotein little a. That was below the reference range in an ideal range on the last couple of blood works. But I did check my VLDL, which is 7 milligrams per deciliter, which is far below the ideal reference range. So something of note. Most of the liver markers stayed pretty comparable to 7 weeks ago. So the globulin, the albumin, the alkaline phosphatase, the gamma GT, and all that stuff stayed pretty comparable. But the liver enzymes did go up quite steeply. The AST increased with 58%, from 54 to 71 units per liter. And now we're double out of the reference range. I'm not happy to see this, to be honest. We're not happy to see this. Of course, my training intensity increased, right? I'm running raloxifene, 5-amino-1-MQ, and all the other compounds in this PED protocol, which are passing the liver once or twice, and maybe raised liver enzymes. The AST went up 58% and the LT went up 45% from 40 to 58 units per liter. So again, I will discontinue all of this stuff. I will stop the training, which could also increase these aminotransferases in the bloodstream. Again, AST and ALT is not only coming from the liver itself, it might also come from skeletal muscle or other organs in the body. So we'll do this fast, right? Without any oral compound besides the EDTA and the calcium diglucarate, right? To promote a little bit of excretion of toxins and heavy metals potentially. And then see how far they come down. Because to be honest, I'm not happy to see this. And I'm really trying to keep these liver enzymes as low as possible going forward. Because again, if I keep them artificially inflated around 70 to 100 units per liter and let that progress, then it will either mask if non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is slowly returning, right? Or it just means that my liver is not detoxifying as optimal as it should be. And that means that I have to be very restrictive of the orals and potentially injectable compounds that I'm running in the future. So let's see how much damage control I can potentiate this next couple of days while I'm fasting. So if these liver enzymes don't come down to an ideal range of where I want them to be after this fast, I won't be taking anything oral over the next couple of weeks. So that's no GW1516, no SR9009, no Clen, no Rowolsine or Yohimbine, no Modafinil, no Raloxifene, anything that passes the liver I will exclude, and then see how much of these liver enzymes are coming from skeletal muscle over the next training block when I do intend to increase my testosterone and primobolan slightly. All right, so stay tuned for the blood work next week. That will kind of determine how I will continue with my performance-enhancing drug protocol. My ferritin and iron levels have come down nicely over the last couple of months. My ferritin used to be over 400 nanograms per milliliter when I had the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Again, ferritin doesn't only store iron, but also is a marker of inflammation in the liver, just like a C-reactive protein, for example. So when ferritin is high and liver enzymes are high, there might be non-alcoholic fatty liver disease present. Now my liver enzymes are still elevated, probably due to the training and the pharmacology that I'm taking, but my ferritin came down to 122 nanograms per milliliter. My iron is 71 micrograms per deciliter, so both are creeping towards the bottom of the reference range. Again, my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is completely resolved, as proven by FibroScan, which I did 13 weeks ago before I started this cycle. But I am at a point now where I feel that it's time to add the beef back in. So I'll add beef, maybe 200 grams twice a week, right? On leg days, for example. So instead of salmon, I'll have 200 grams of beef post-workout on the quad day and the hamstring day. And then over the next 7 weeks, I will see how much of this 2 beef meals per week will increase my iron and my ferritin levels going forward. I checked my thyroid panel because I wanted to see how much of an effect ACG would have on my thyroid function, right? And now we know that ACG might interact with thyroid stimulating hormone receptors on the thyroid gland and could potentially alter a thyroid function. So before I added in the ACG 7 weeks ago, my thyroid stimulating hormone was 1.92 micro IU per milliliter. And now, 7 weeks on 250 IU's ACG 3 times per week, my thyroid stimulating hormone increased, surprisingly, with 57% from about 2 to 3 micro IU's per milliliter. Is that a moment in time? Is that an effect of the ACG? I'm not really sure. In both cases, I was not taking any T4 supplementation or T3 supplementation. My iodine intake stayed the same. My selenium stayed the same. My cardio stayed the same. My caloric intake did increase from 2,500 calories to 2,800 calories. I did not use growth hormone. In both cases, I was using HGH frag, which seems to have no effect on thyroid conversion, unlike growth hormone does, which is known to increase the conversion of T4 into T3 by increasing deiodinase enzyme activity. So my TSH increased with 56%, My free T4 levels stayed pretty much the same though, from 0.98 to 0.99 nanograms per deciliter, so that's pretty much the same. But my free T3 went from 2.53 picograms per milliliter down with 9.5% to 2.29 picograms per milliliter. So again, I think this is a moment in time. I increased my calories with 10%, but comparing the blood work results from 7 weeks ago to now, free T3 went down 9.3%, which probably as a result of that increased my TSH levels from 2 to 3 microIUs per milliliter. I will test it again a week from now. Maybe it went down again. Free T3 levels go up and thyroid stimulating hormone levels go down. Right? It's a normal negative feedback or positive feedback similar to the HBTA with testosterone and estradiol levels regulating the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone levels. Starting to lose my voice a little bit. There's been a lot of talking today, too many consultations, and now this video. Trying to document everything for you guys. Sorry. So, I think it's just a moment in time, but as of now, I would say that ACG has no positive effect on thyroid levels. So, maybe time will tell if it will bring thyroid levels higher. But as of now, even though my calories increased, ACG seems to have no effect or no positive effect on my TSH or free T3 levels. And now we're finally at the sex hormones. I know you use the timestamps. Let me know down below if you did. Estradiol increased by 31% or almost 31% from 30.8 to 40.3 picograms per milliliter. So even though I increased my injection frequency over the last 7 weeks, going from 2 injections of 78 milligrams on Monday and Friday to 3 injections of 52 milligrams, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Even though I increased my injection frequency, did not increase the dose of testosterone per week. Estradiol increased from 31 to 41 picograms per milliliter, a 31% increase. That could be by adding in the ACG, right? ACG also produces estradiol directly in the testicles. I wanted to check my estrone and estriol levels, but unfortunately, Bria Labs only offers estriol, not estrone. They don't have a total estrogen marker test there, so I felt it's pretty useless to just test the estradiol and the estriol without having the estrone or the total estrogens to make a little bit of a smart calculation and deduct how much estrone is present. So, right, and it's not a high sensitivity test. Needless to say, a 31% increase of estriol is notable. When I look into the literature, some studies show that raloxifene can increase serum estradiol concentrations. Is that by increasing LH and FSH levels? Potentially. I did not check it this time because, well, I'm on exogenous testosterone and primo, and I'm not using anything to stimulate the hypothalamus or the pituitary at this point in time, but besides the raloxifene, I don't think my LH and FSH levels came up in any way, shape, or form. What I speculate is that either the ACG raised my estradiol concentrations or the raloxifene is kicking some of the estrogen from the receptor by blocking the estrogen alpha and beta receptors on particular organs of the body, preventing estradiol from attaching, right, from binding to the estrogen alpha and beta receptors, increasing serum concentrations. So again, this is why I'm adding in the calcium diglucarate to see if the calcium diglucarate can improve glucuronidation of estradiol and promote excretion. So I'll retest the estradiol and the total testosterone next week to see how much of a positive or negative effect the exclusion of raloxifene and the inclusion of 2000 milligrams calcium diglucarate will have on my sex hormones. So estradiol went up slightly. I'm not alarmed by 40.3 picograms per milliliter. X-ray, I still feel good. I don't feel any reduction in fat loss because, well, I haven't been really trying the last 2 weeks. So maybe if I notice that fat loss is inhibited, the next couple of weeks while I'm continuing with my fat loss journey, I might add in the dinyl methane. But well, I will make some changes to my testosterone and primobolan protocol going forward. So I think that will be sufficient to bring that estradiol back down to about 20, 25, 30 picograms per milliliter, which seems to be a little bit more favorable for fat loss of the lower body. Progesterone still the same, undetectable below 0.1 nanograms per milliliter. Testosterone came up slightly with only 6.1%. Could be because I changed my injection frequency, so even though the dose is the same and I added in the ACG, it only went from 1,066 to 1,131 nanograms per deciliter. Free testosterone increased with about 10%, 11%, from 30.1 to 33.3 nanograms per deciliter, and bioavailable testosterone went from 722 to 816 nanograms per deciliter, which is an increase of 13%. But surprisingly, even though I'm running raloxifene 60 milligrams per day, my sex hormone binding globulin still decreased by 12.7% from 23.7 to 20.7 nanomoles per liter. That could be because I increased the injection frequency, right? I'm subjecting my body to androgens more frequently Monday, Wednesday, Friday, instead of Monday and Friday, what I was doing previously. Honestly, I would have expected my sex hormone binding globulin to go up, being on raloxifene, a selective estrogen receptor modulator, acting like an estrogen in the liver, and just like clomiphene and tamoxifen, which do raise sex hormone binding globulin levels, I would have expected the same from raloxifene, right? Tamoxifen, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams per day, 50 milligrams clomiphene per day, or 50 milligrams enclomiphene on a cycle like this would all raise SHBG levels. But in my case, it went down. It could be because I increased the injection frequency, but I'm still quite surprised to see this. And I'm running ACG, and my estradiol has gone up with 31%. Yet, my sex hormone binding globulin levels went down. So the high estradiol is not potent enough to keep it in range or to keep it comparable. The raloxifene is not potent enough to keep the SHBG comparable when changing the injection frequency. So keep it in mind, guys, changing the injection frequency and staying on exogenous testosterone and primobolan will still slowly bring your sex hormone binding globulin levels down. And a high estradiol and the selective estrogen receptor modulator like raloxifene might still not be potent enough to keep it above the ideal range. Now, I'm still over 20 nanomoles per liter. My sex drive is still phenomenal. But I think going forward, especially if I increase the dose of testosterone and primobolan and take the raloxifene out, if my liver enzymes don't come down to favorable ranges during this fast, my sex hormone binding globulin might still crash to 15, 12, 10 nanomoles per liter over the time that I'm going to do blood work again. Time will tell. And now that I think about it, another potential reason why my sex hormone binding globulin levels came down over the last 7 weeks could be because free T3 also went down with 9.5% over the last 7 weeks. So between both markers, on average, T3, free T3, and SHBG both came down with 10% approximately. Is that related? Potentially, because thyroid levels have also been associated with sex hormone binding globulin levels. High thyroid, high sex hormone binding globulin. Low thyroid, low sex hormone binding globulin. So that could be related between both markers. And I also see that my total T3 on this blood work results from yesterday are 68 nanograms per deciliter, which is towards the bottom of the reference range. So unfortunately, I did not check my total T3 or total T4 levels 7 weeks ago, just a free T3 and free T4 levels, which changed a little bit. But it could be that my total T3 also came down with about 10% from 7 weeks ago. So there must be a relation between both markers. Surprisingly, I would think that my thyroid markers would go up with a 10% caloric increase. But blood work doesn't lie. So these changes over the last 7 weeks show that free T3 and SHBG levels are declining. So I might have to do a little bit of a reverse diet at one point, because you don't want the longer you diet, the lower your thyroid levels generally get. And I'm not lean enough to facilitate the use of 25 micrograms T3 at this point, or at least I feel I'm not lean enough. But if I see my T3 levels decline, resulting in my SHBG levels declining, regardless of the pharmacology that's in place at this point, I might have to do a reverse diet of about 4 weeks to really restore my thyroid function, resulting in a higher SHBG level as well, which could then potentiate more anabolism through the sex hormone binding globulin receptor complex when androgens bind to the sex hormone binding globulin, resulting in increases in cyclic adenosine monophosphate concentrations within skeletal muscle, right, resulting in anabolism downstream. So I might have to make some manipulations to my diet, but right, from a 2-week caloric increase, again, the free T3 didn't go up and the SHBG also didn't stay the same. So keep all of that in mind. Maybe in a couple of weeks from now, we'll have to do a reverse diet because, again, I've been in a caloric restrictive state for months now. And my blood work is showing it. DHEA-Sulfate increased from 185 to 351 micrograms per deciliter by the inclusion of ACG. So that's almost 90% increase. I'm very happy to see that. I do feel more cognitive. Right? It's the DHEA-Sulfate and the pregnenolone that potentially increased as well. Unfortunately, I can't test pregnenolone at Bria Labs, only DHEA-Sulfate, so I'm just going to assume that pregnenolone concentrations went up as well. I don't see the immediate need to supplement pregnenolone or DHEA concentrations in, but if this goes down, so this is 350 micrograms per deciliter, pretty much the middle of the reference range for men. If this goes down by the increase of testosterone and primobolan, which I'm considering, then I will switch from ACG to DHEA and pregnenolone supplementation, right? Again, blood work will tell me everything I need to know, but for now, we'll keep the ACG in. Hemoglobin A1C, pretty comparable to where it is always 4.8%. I believe the last time I checked, it was 4.7%. Very comparable. I checked all of my cancer markers because now it's been 1 year anniversary since I was diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It has nothing to do with cancer markers, but that was the initial reason why I went to Bangkok Hospital to do an ultrasound of all of my organs because the neuronal specific annulase was elevated. So I felt the need to check my cancer markers again. And out of all of the cancer markers, the only thing which is elevated because the reference range is a little bit narrow is the growth hormone, which I'm not running at this moment. So for anybody wondering if 10 years of pharmaceutical growth hormone or Chinese generic growth hormone use will shut down your endogenous growth hormone production? No, right? So in my case, no. Maybe in your case, also no, but you need to do that blood work screening for yourself. All of the cancer markers are comparable to where they have been over the last 10 times that I've tested my cancer markers. So far so good. We're in the green. I could reintroduce growth hormone again, but I don't want to because we're trying to stay streamlined. And I'm really enjoying this very low subcutaneous water levels that I'm having right now. Again, I checked my serum electrolytes. Those are all in range. I will save those electrolytes reading and discussion for when I get the before and after blood work results of the serum electrolytes and the heavy metals, which I will get in a couple weeks. And I'll make a separate video on how this EDTA disodium chelation and calcium deglucarate method that I'm doing right now is improving my electrolytes and heavy metal concentrations in my body. So stay tuned for that. That will be released when those results are in. Considering what I was running up until this blood work, I would say that my lipids are where I expected them to be. And the same can be said for the sex hormones, considering what I was running. Besides the thyroid panel in the SHBG levels, I feel that everything is pretty much where I expected them to be. Again, I'm not happy with the liver enzymes, but I hope I can correct those markers going forward. The thyroid function and the SHBG, it's pretty much a matter of time will tell. Very happy with all of my cancer markers. Those seem to be perfectly where they should be. So all things considering, I'm thinking about the following protocol from next week onwards, right? After I finish this fast, fingers crossed, my liver enzymes improve and all of the other markers which I will test before and after will improve also. I'm toying with the following PED protocol going forward, consisting of 233 milligrams testosterone enanthate and 375 milligrams primo per week. So the injection frequency will not change, but I will increase the testosterone from 52 milligrams 3 times per week to 78 milligrams 3 times per week. I know it's a bit of a funky number, but it's pretty much a quarter ampule of Bayer testoviron 3 times per week, plus a full ampule of Bayer rimobolan, which is about 125 milligrams methylene enanthate. Again, these ampules are generally overfilled, so you get about 1.2, 1.3 milliliters per ampule. So that results in about 78 milligrams of testosterone enanthate coming from a quarter ampule Bayer testoviron, plus 125 milligrams methylene enanthate coming from a full ampule of Bayer rimobolan, injected Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for a total of 608 milligrams anabolic androgenic steroids combined per week. So it's basically doubling the dose. The injection frequency will not change. Bumping the roloxifene to 120 milligrams per day is tentative, depending on my liver enzymes. I will keep the ACG the same for the next block until I do blood work again at 250 IUs on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If that keeps my DHEA-Sulfate in range, I will continue with that. And if it doesn't keep my DHEA-Sulfate in range and my Estradiol comes down disproportionately, then I will switch the ACG for either HMG, if I can source it by the time, fingers crossed. I highly doubt it, but fingers crossed I can find HMG by the time. And otherwise I will go into 50 milligrams DHEA and 25 milligrams pregnenolone supplementation, which I feel at the ripe age of 38, I'm going to need, right? I'm not producing so much DHEA by myself anymore. And pregnenolone potentially, I can't test it with blood work. I'm just suspecting that those levels will be towards the bottom of the reference range as well. So I'm going to go to the high dose of 50 milligrams DHEA and 25 milligrams pregnenolone if the ACG is ineffective and I can't source HMG instead. I will reintroduce 10 milligrams GHK copper post-workout on training days, administered 5 milligrams bilaterally to see how much of an effect it would have on my triceps, my chest, and other body parts, which I intend to enhance by increasing collagen synthesis locally. Again, stay tuned for the final how to improve weaker body parts video coming in a couple weeks from now. I might introduce 50 milligrams modafinil again, right, to help with cognition and reduce appetite as I continue with my diet. I will probably reintroduce 0.6 to 1.2 milligrams liraglutide 6 times per week, so 0.6 milligrams Monday to Wednesday and 1.2 milligrams Thursday to Saturday, taking Sunday off so I can refeed. Tentative 20 micrograms clenbuterol Monday to Saturday before fasted cardio. Tentative 20 to 30 milligrams GW1516 before fasted cardio and pre-workout. 20 to 30 milligrams SR9009 tentative pre-cardio and pre-workout. 3 milligrams roloxifene before cardio, also tentative. Again, all of these orals are tentative depending on how my liver enzymes are improving over this next fast. And if they don't improve to satisfactory levels, I will keep the roloxifene, the modafinil, the clenbuterol, the GW1516, the SR9009, and the roloxifene out. And then proceed, with liraglutide as my sole method to suppress appetite and get the rest of the fat loss from being in a caloric restrictive state and increasing my metabolic rate by increasing my overall anabolics, resulting in higher muscularity, resulting in more metabolic rate, right? More energy demand because my muscularity has increased. Ancillaries, I will keep the same 5 milligrams nebivolol per day, 10 milligrams ezetimibe per day, 40 milligrams telmisartan per day. This is the tentative protocol from next week onwards. Let me know what you think about this protocol. Again, I'm doubling my steroid intake, but honestly, I feel that I've earned it. Right? 13 weeks on 281 milligrams steroids, the lowest effective dose. I was able to get up to 100 kilos, restoring a large portion of the muscle mass that I used to have, right, through muscle memory. I'm trying to stay under 100 kilos. I do think that I will shoot over to 105, but then we'll slowly start to come down to 100 kilos again as this caloric deficit gets bigger and bigger as my muscularity increases, right? So before, 2,500 calories was a pretty steep caloric deficit. And then as the muscularity increases, this caloric deficit gets steeper and steeper and steeper, resulting in more fat loss. So in my opinion, I felt that I pretty much accomplished everything I could accomplish, relying on muscle memory while eating 2,500 to 2,800 calories per day and using 281 milligrams of steroids in total. I feel that I've pretty much maxed out my physique on that protocol with the other ancillaries and appetite suppressants and fat loss aids in place. I felt that I was pretty much maxed out. That's why I started eating a little bit more in Padilla and the week after, up until this deload and fast that is now taking place. Now, of course, I shortened the gap between caloric expenditure and caloric intake by increasing my caloric intake from 2,500 to 2,800 or so. So now the next logical step, I could either reduce the fat, right, from this diet to go back down to 2,500 calories while having a little bit higher protein intake and lower fat intake, which at that point in time I'm not willing to do because I'm trying to stay cognitive. I do want a decent amount of calories in place to not get moody, not get a little bit of a hangry diet mode going on. So instead, I'm going to increase my metabolic rate by increasing the steroids, which is going to result in a higher amount of muscle mass, a higher amount of caloric expenditure in the gym, as well as at rest, because my muscle mass is now higher. So I'm changing the caloric deficit not by reducing my calories. I'm changing the caloric deficit by increasing my muscularity and my metabolic rates because the steroids are going up. I think that all the results that I got from 281 milligrams for 13 weeks was a pretty accurate window of time. So I do expect to get very good results for the next 13 weeks on 608 milligrams steroids in total. Again, my testosterone is going up, my primobolan is going up, and depending on the blood work, I might add in or increase some of the ancillaries going forward. Again, the blood work will tell me everything I need to know for the next couple of weeks. And I really hope that these kinds of videos give you guys some insight on how to coach yourself as I'm coaching myself right now with the blood work results, with the before and after pictures, with the body weight changes, and tracking the macros and the protocol and all that stuff over the cycle duration as the physique keeps changing. Because the diet will only work for a certain period of time. I felt that this 2,500 calorie diet was not working anymore, so I increased the calories to 2,800 by increasing the protein intake while keeping the fat and the carb intake pretty much the same, and spacing the food macros a little bit apart. So that was working for a certain period of time until you have to change it. Same as with the training. I felt that it was working for a certain period of time, and now I'm slowly starting to lower the volume but increasing the intensity and the working weight. Now I felt that I was stagnating there as well. Increasing the calories improved it a little bit, especially going off diet improved the strength for 2 weeks. But now that I'm reducing the calories, to keep progressing, the protocol is going to change. So the steroids are going to go up, but depending on my blood work results, I might remove or add or increase some of the ancillaries and the other compounds which come alongside the testosterone and the primobolan. The body weight, I'm trying to keep the same. I know it will go up by increasing the steroids, so let's say to 105 kilos, but then staying on 2,800 calories more strictly should bring the body weight back down and hover around 100 kilos. And as I stagnate with fat loss, I might reintroduce the 5-amino-1-MQ or some of the other fat burners, assuming that my liver enzymes stay acceptable, right? All these things you keep into consideration, and then you slowly make adjustments, slowly make little tweaks, slowly go by how your body is changing based on the before and after and during progress pictures, right? And the body weight changes. And then slowly, you completely transform over months. Not weeks, not days, months. You have to have the patience in place. And again, when you see something off in your blood work, it's okay to take a step back, as I take steps back. Right? And I'm getting older, so I'm getting a little bit more cautious because I do understand that this whole bodybuilding journey is finite and temporary. And as I get older, I'm getting more restrictive and I'm a little bit more cautious of what I'm doing with my physique. So I hope it helps. I hope you guys learned something. Let me know what you guys think about this cycle that I have scheduled for next week onwards. Again, it's all highly dependent on the blood work results. That will determine the protocol going forward. I will solidify that in the next blood work update, which we'll probably do next week, Monday. Stay tuned for that. If you're not subscribed yet, now would be a good time to do so you don't have to miss out on that video. For now, I'll leave it here. Yeah, this video was way too long again, but you guys like those details, like me to go as in-depth as possible, as do I. I enjoy making these kinds of videos, even though they probably don't get so many views. But hey, the Vigorous crew is always loyal. I know you guys are watching this to the end. So here is your front double bicep. 1 day fasting in. We're a couple hours in. Not a full day yet, but we're still full. Let's see how these front double biceps look by the end of this week without any real aid in place to keep the fullness and the fat loss going strong. Thank you guys so much for watching. You know where to find the ebooks. You know where to find the consultations. Follow me on Instagram at VigorSteve. Have a look at my link tree there. Until the next video, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.